So, James, we're inching closer to Durbin 2.0.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, the Senator Durbin and Roger Marshall, who's a Republican from Kansas, are planning to offer the Credit Card Competition Act as an amendment to the Genius Act.
What's the Genius Act?
The Genius Act, officially known as Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act. Don't you
Okay.
love the way they come up with these acronyms? I mean,
I mean, it's actually pretty impressive. I mean, not as impressive anymore because I'm sure they're using AI for it,
right?
but yeah, I mean, the thing I'm laughing about though is like, of course, that's where they should attach this new, credit card competition act
Right?
to the stable coin regulation. It's like,
Right.
come on, guys.
Yeah, in the old days, we used to call these Christmas trees.
Hmm.
Um, so that the Genius Act aims to create the first comprehensive federal regulatory framework for stablecoins,
Okay.
which, as we've explained in the past, they're cryptocurrencies pegged to stable assets like the U.S. dollar.
Right.
So debate on the Genius Act ended on May 19th through a procedure known as cloture, passing on a 66 to 32 vote, which means it was bipartisan. A vote on the bill is expected once on the Senate floor once lawmakers return from the Memorial Day recess. Now, just to remind people, the Credit Card Competition Act would mandate that merchants be able to choose over which networks their payment card transactions get processed. To accommodate that, the largest issuers of cards, those with 100 billion in assets, would be required to program the cards they issue to be able to process on two networks, only one of which can be owned by Visa or MasterCard. The premise being that merchant choice would lower interchange rates as the networks compete for business. Now, the legislation has broad support from retailers, Republicans, Democrats in the House and Senate, and even Indian tribes. There was a
Hmm.
the this coalition of Indian Native Americans sent a letter to Congress to actually to uh, the heads the minority and the majority leaders of the Senate
Yeah.
ask, asking them to pass the legislation.
Hmm.
Now, the Merchant Payments Coalition claims that the act has support of almost 2,000 companies and nearly 300 trade associations, as well as a broad group of consumer, labor, and pro competition organizations. At a hearing last year called by Durbin, prominent Republican senators Lindsey Graham and Tom Tillis, who are both Republicans, chastised the card brands, with Tillis asserting that small businesses have a legitimate concern and, quote, if you don't figure that out, you're going to get Durbin Marshall.
Hmm. Wow.
So, so
I mean,
I mean,
as you know, this is probably my least favorite legislation from my entire lifetime so far.
so far, yeah, you got a ways to go.
I have a ways to go yet, but it's just awful.
Oh,
So
it is. It's and and the thing is that this is just like I said. It's inching closer. It's passed in the Senate. It still has to pass in the Genius Act with this amendment would still have to pass, and of course the amendment you know it may not make it in. You
right.
know the but if it does, it would then go to the House, and then it could be you know taken out by the House,
Yeah.
or it could be approved.
Well, and I think so for our listeners, just a real quick version of this, right? So the idea here is right now, if you have a Visa card and you run the transaction, it goes over the Visa network,
Right,
which makes sense.
right,
Um, I don't even know what something else would look like if it wasn't that. But the idea is that merchants have the ability to, when they run a Visa card, that merchant should be able to choose between two other networks where they can send that transaction. So calling it the Credit Card Competition Act. The problem with that is, when you have encrypted transactions and things, this bill is really meddling with the core infrastructure of our payments ecosystem.
yes, it
Um,
is,
and
yes,
this is something that has worked well for decades. It's like I'm not a fan of this regulation at all, but I mean, if you wanted to reduce the cost of interchange, do what the rest of the world has done and regulate the cost of interchange. It's what the Durbin
exactly,
Amendment did before. They just regulated the debit, interchange
right,
again. I'm not a fan of that, but I'm saying this whole Credit Card Competition Act is absolutely ridiculous.
Well,
And
well,
so, you know,
and it just shows that, the lawmakers don't understand how the system works.
no, not at all. And I think it'll be even a bigger mess than the last Durbin Amendment that came
Oh
out.
yeah. Oh
So,
yeah, definitely. And like we said, I mean, it's inching. Hopefully it won't make it. Hopefully they'll get their act together, and hopefully somebody will go up there and educate the lawmakers on why this is impractical.
yes,
But and frankly, in my mind, that's the ETA's job,
right, right,
or the ABA, the
right,
American Bankers Association, or
right.
the community bankers. But the bankers associations, besides just, they're besides doing, press releases and commercials and stuff like that, should be up on the Hill
Yes,
lobbying and explaining this to lawmakers.
agreed. All right, well, keep us posted on this one, Patty. What's our
Oh, I
second
will.
one?
I'm following this one close. So, Visa has announced a new program that helps businesses embed payments into their products and platforms.
Hmm.
It's called Visa Commercial Integrated Partners, and it aims to improve connectivity between financial technology firms and Visa commercial products through its commercial platform. Visa, in a press release, said it will make available advanced APIs to embed Visa products in business partners' applications and make these integrations available to its financial institution clients, allowing them to offer new seamless payment experiences to business customers.
So is that so, Patty? When you say that, if I'm understanding it right, it sounds like what you're saying is kind of like what Apple Pay and Google Wallet and some of these have done. Where again, I know it's not exactly the same thing, but where they've been able to store, like digitally store our card on our phone so that we can use it. You're
It's
saying that
kind of the
they're
same thing.
they're
Yeah,
providing
yeah.
APIs so that other technology solutions can do that type of thing.
And but this being for sort of commercial customers as opposed to retail
Oh,
customers.
I see. Okay, got it. All right. Okay.
Okay.
So instead of
So
consumers, this is aimed more at businesses.
right, right. So
Okay.
like one of the first products is called Car IQ, which is a leader in fleet and vehicle technology. I
Okay.
haven't heard of it, but that's how
Right.
they explain them. Um, it's enabling integration with the platform. Clients will be able to access Car IQ software from their business customers for their business customers and enable in-app payments with virtual cards at fuel providers without extensive supplier onboarding and development, which would
Very cool.
save a whole lot in terms of due diligence time, in terms of due diligence, integration work, and project management.
Right. Okay.
You know,
No, so basically you're saying this company sounds like they have a software to help you manage your fleet of trucks or whatever, and
right,
you can
right,
now give your truck, your truck drivers, they can have a virtual card to get fuel, that type of thing, and it's just kind of built into whatever the software is.
right, right.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a quote from Visa's head of commercial solutions. Visa Commercial Integrated Payments represents a significant step forward in our mission to empower financial technology providers and financial institutions with innovative digital payment solutions. The idea is that FIs can leverage Visa Commercial Integrated Payments to offer customers enhanced payment solutions. You know, not, in addition to the example I just gave, there's also, enterprise resource management type situations,
Sure.
expense management, um, mobile and vehicle apps. They can offer tokenization through virtual cards and more elaborate transaction
Cool.
controls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's
Yeah,
an
we'll see.
interesting advance. I mean,
Yeah.
and what strikes me is that, it sort of shows how Visa's just always a little bit ahead of the curve on these kinds of things.
Right. That's how they keep their competitive edge for sure. So,
Yeah, for
okay.
sure.
Interesting. All right. What's our third one today?
Third one today is Nevada. The Nevada legislature is considering a bill that to offer a special charter for banks that just handle payments. The charter is for payments banks.
Okay. Like sponsor banks.
Right, right. Allowing fintechs and others to access payment rails and help retailers reduce expenses is the way they explain it.
Interesting.
It would establish procedures for licensing retailers, payment processors, remittance companies, and others to apply as banks for direct access to U.S. payment systems like the ACH, FedWire, and FedNow.
Wow.
They would be prohibited from engaging in lending and lending related activities, and they would not have FDIC insurance.
Right.
The bill would also set a limit on merchant acquiring activity um, pricing to 25 basis points.
Hmm.
Um, Several, this is not unique. I mean, there's several states that have special charters for banks.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah, we
know,
were we were just talking about one a few weeks ago that Square was getting a charter from, or I guess it's Block now or something.
yeah.
Maybe I was reading about it, but yeah, I know they were getting a charter. It wasn't in Arizona though. I think can't remember which one it was in.
Now this is Nevada, close,
Right.
but right. Well, and last year I remember talking about this. Last year, Georgia granted a payment process, a bank charter to Fiserv.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that may be what, because we've talked about that.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's only in the early stages, but you can see how large retailers, would charter their own banks to bypass the traditional card rails,
Right. Right.
or at least bypass the pricing of traditional card
Right.
rails.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. And again, I think it's just so interesting to me, all of it, because seeing how the industry is unfolding, it's kind of like opening up a bit more to where
right,
you used to be kind of the, old boys club to be able to do anything, to really have any kind of
right,
control over the
right.
process. And I think, fintech is upending that. And I think it'll be interesting to see, what options are available to fast growing fintech companies over the next 36 months. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You put this against what's going on in Congress, right?
Right. Right.
I mean, the states again, as is often the case, the states are always just a little, are always ahead of Congress and of the
Sure.
House and Senate.
Right.
It- and that's because I think they have a closer relationship with the businesses and the banks in their
Well, and I
constituency.
also think it's how it should be, right? If there's a new idea, it's like, well, that idea may or may not be a good idea for all of the states, but it might be a good
Right.
idea for one of the states. And then when they test that out and that we see good results from it, then
Maybe
federally we
another state will
can,
do it.
yeah,
Right.
and then we can act, at a federal level. So it makes sense.
And
I
it,
think
I,
good.
I think I told you once before, and just to reiterate, way back in days when you might have only been a glimmer in your dad's eye. Um, there were, there was not interstate banking. Every bank had to be chartered in its
In
state.
one, right, right,
And then what they did is the states had compact. The first step to interstate banking was the state compact. So like New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut would allow branching between themselves.
right, right.
So I see something like this,
Hmm.
you know, that could lead potentially leading to
Right.
compacts.
Sure. As other states see what Nevada's doing, and hey, maybe this is working out well, and then they want to do
Yeah,
something
let's
different,
make a deal with Nevada, and we'll
Right.
let
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. Good stuff. I think you said you had one more quick one for us today,
Yeah, I
right? Or
have
what?
one more quick one, and this comes from the UK,
Okay.
where the government has said it wants to end the quote wild west of unregulated POS borrowing that is buy now, pay later.
Okay.
According to the BBC, 11 million folks in the UK have used buy now, pay later in the past year, but there are fears that some are spending more than they can afford. So, this new legislation, which is set to take effect next year, um, would require BNPL firms to follow consistent standards so shoppers know what they are signing up for, you know, that there are upfront checks to determine if they can afford the purchase, and directions on how consumers can get help if they need it.
Mm. Yeah, I like the first and third one, but the second one gets a little sticky to me. That's
That
like,
gets a little, what are upfront checks to determine,
eh,
if they can afford it? I mean,
right.
well, to me, that's actually a going to getting a credit report, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's what it is, I think the UK definitely has shown, issues in further regulation than maybe is necessary. I was listening to a podcast just recently, and one of the guys in the podcast, we were talking about AI and ChatGPT in particular, and ChatGPT 4.0 isn't available in the UK right now because the UK still has some kind of arbitrary AI regulation that makes it illegal to use that technology there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
and there's a lot of things like that. But yeah, I think they kind of, a lot of the stuff sounds good, and then you're like, yeah, okay, so I want the government to figure out whether or not I can afford something. Maybe
Right.
not. Maybe I'd rather have that freedom to myself still. But
Yeah.
obviously I go a little more on the conservative side of these things. That kind of stuff in particular always is like, just
Yeah, but
but
also just to play devil's advocate here,
yeah,
and we all know that I'm on the liberal side
right,
of
right. That's
things
why we have good
anyway.
conversations. Yeah,
Right. That's what I would. You're right. There are people who are not that savvy, you
sure.
know,
And
and who
they're getting
just
duped into making decisions that they shouldn't make.
and they keep doing these. I know people like that who
Right,
would just keep on doing these BNPLs, and they stack them all up, and you know, and then suddenly like they can't pay the rent.
right,
you
right,
know
right.
Actually, I had a tenant like that. um you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
she had all
right,
kinds of loans out, but she couldn't, and she
right.
couldn't pay the rent.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, these lending companies will, especially BNPL, I hope over time, because you think about BNPL is probably going to be the first debt that you're going to default on. Like, in other words, if you have,
Right.
you're not,
Right.
you're going to pay your mortgage before you pay your BNPL, right? So
Of course.
hopefully it's expanded rapidly. There's been a lot of force behind it. Hopefully the market will take over there and BNPLs will start to see their default rates rise.
Oh, I
And
think they already are seeing their default
right.
rates rise. Yeah.
And as default rates rise, they should be making those corrections themselves to say, hold on, we have to be a little more cautious here, not because we want to restrict the freedom of somebody to borrow, but because there's a free market principle at play here of we want to get paid
Right.
back. And if we don't
Right.
think you can pay us back, we're not going to give you the money. That's how that, in my opinion, that's how that should work. That's,
And
when the government gets involved with saying, and let us tell you how to do that. It's like, I don't know that a bunch of, politicians are the best ones to help us figure out how to determine if somebody can afford a loan or not. I think I'd rather the free market and the company figure that one out.
you know what, James? That's where you and I agree.
Yeah.
Because I do think that this is definitely a free market kind of situation.
Yeah.
If these companies are smart enough, they're just not going to give the BNPL out
Right. It's like,
to
why would
certain
they? They
sectors.
know they're not going to get paid back. If they get too aggressive, they're going to not get paid back. Default rates rise, and then it's like, all right, we got to make
Right.
an adjustment. And
I
again, I agree, there are going to be some people who get hurt along the way in that process for sure. Going to hurt their credit. It's going to, you know what I mean.
right, right.
But these things have a way of correcting themselves, and I think when you overcorrect, it's pretty easy to do that and make some stupid mistakes, on the political side. So,
I saw a little snippet recently that Klarna was, lost a ton of money on defaults in the
yep.
last quarter.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
They'll start making adjustments. So.
yeah. So,
Well, Patty, thank you so much for all the research you do, keeping us informed about the industry. We always appreciate the insights, and thank you for all you do.
thank you, James.